Inside America's Boardrooms, the informational show for board members and corporate secretaries. Brought to you with Knowledge Partners, NASDAQ, the Center for Audit Quality, and PwC. Along with content contributors Equilar, Meridian Compensation Partners, Wilson Sonsini Goodrich and Rosati, Donnelly Financial Solutions, and the Society for Corporate Governance.
Welcome to this edition of Inside America's Boardrooms. I'm TK Kerstetter, the CEO of Boardroom Resources, and it's my pleasure to welcome you to this very unique and special show. Today we have a father and daughter team, if you will, where the daughter has shared the father's board service pathway. And it's really a pleasure for me because I've known these two for some time. So first let me introduce, to my immediate left is Ann Harlan, who's the lead director for Gorman Rupp Company, also is the co-CEO of Harlan Peterson Partners. Welcome, Ann.
Thank you.
And to her left is her father, Steve Harlan, who served on multiple public company boards, is now retired, but interestingly enough was the audit chair in most of the boards that he joined. So, Steve, welcome.
Thank you.
So I have to give a little background to this. So in my former years, I was running board events, and we had a rather large one in New York, and Ann came up to me during the course of that and said, this is so interesting. My board wanted me to come to this, and it turns out that my dad is here representing their board, so we're a father-daughter team that's at the conference. Well, it really struck me as very unique, particularly having daughters. I made them both stand up so the whole audience could recognize that. And Steve, all I can think of now is it had to be a very proud moment for you, knowing that your daughter had successfully engineered her career to be invited to serve on a board as well.
You're right, TK. We're very proud of Ann. Ann has done a lot of things very well in her life, and we think that she's just terrific.
Yeah, and Ann, you had to feel equally proud at that moment in time that there you were, you know, father-daughter at such a large and prestigious event.
Oh, there's no question about it. There is no greater joy than being in a business context with my dad, and that conference was absolute highlight.
Yeah. Well, so Steve, let's assume for the course of our audience that you've, after all those years of serving on boards, and you, whether you did this or not, but was going to offer your daughter some advice. Give me, say, 2 or 3 tips that if you could go back in time, what would you have offered, or what did you offer at that point to make sure that she could be as effective corporate director as possible?
Okay, TK, thank you. I think one of the most important things is to be positive. Now, I don't talking about being Pollyanna, but be positive. Have a can-do attitude, regardless of what's happening. I know that was important for me as an auditor. A lot of people say, well, he always takes the negative side of something. Worked hard at being positive and looking at that. And then build relationships. Always build relationships and trust. You can't have people trust you unless you trust them. It's a two-way street, and understand that. And to help people. And then understand the difference between a board responsibility and a management responsibility. Management runs the company. Boards have a responsibility for strategy, for vision, making sure it's going in the right direction. It has responsibility to check and see that the procedures are in place, the control procedures are in place, not to do the day-to-day monitoring of them, but to see that, for instance, delegation of authority is appropriate, makes sense, and that the company can rely on it. And then the most important thing, I think, bottom line, is understand the business. Work hard at gaining knowledge about the particular business. You may never know it as well as the senior management of the company, because they do it every day, and as a board member you don't. But understand the business. Well, what are the important metrics that runs the business? How do you measure that? How do you know whether you're winning or you're losing? You got to understand the business. So those are the three things I think. And then just, it's a little bit like what you learn in kindergarten is important for the rest of your life. It's the moral compass, having standards of yourself, and you can't expect others to behave in a certain way unless you're behaving in that way.
Yeah.
So it's those kinds of things.
Well, good life lessons and board lessons,
That's
right?
right.
So let's flip that, Ann. So let's say, obviously some of what your dad was doing had to sort of come through in osmosis, okay? But so what was that? What did you particularly learn? And then second of all, when you actually went on that first board, what sort of surprised you? What weren't you prepared for, okay?
Great questions. What did I learn? I have been learning, my brother and I have been learning from our dad and really from both our parents all our lives. And in many cases, not even realizing those life lessons were going to serve us well in the corner office, in the boardroom, throughout our life. The attitude that Dad talked about, but the positive, focused goal settings. It was expected of us as part of the family. Pointed out to us when we didn't either have those goals or reach those goals. And also just the relationships and the communication and how important that is. The other thing I'd say about Dad is he had EQ before EQ was even a word, before all those business consultants understood the importance of listening, communication, knowing your strengths, motivating others. He really understood that. And he understood the business application for that. And he understood the family application for that. So it was absolute life lesson. It was a tone around our dinner table. What are you doing? How are you doing it? What are the risks? Let's think about it. It was okay to fail. It wasn't okay to try. And all of those attributes really have application regardless of what you're doing in life and have served me very well. I think, in the boardroom. We'd even have stand-up meetings, around the kitchen table when he was headed off to a meeting. Before stand-up meetings were even part of the business culture.
That's to keep them short, right?
That's to keep them short. That's right. I'm not sure whose benefit that was for.
Yeah.
But key learning, really that all those skills are relevant. The surprise in my first board was just realizing how all of those skills, the critical thinking, the communication, the listening, the understanding that many times the meeting happens before the meeting, all of those life lessons are ones that have really served me well in my role as a board member.
So what was the surprise when you joined the board? Was there anything that sort of you weren't prepared for?
I think probably the biggest surprise, especially early on in some of the smaller companies that I had the pleasure to work with, was that not everyone had that structure and discipline and vision. And you saw people grow, and that was a wonderful benefit of being part of the board. But what we took for granted, being part of the family dynamic and part of our professional life, wasn't always the standard.
That's why in the PwC study, 36% of board members think there's somebody on the board that should be replaced.
Is that right?
Yeah. So and that's been the way for 10 years. So
yeah. You're probably right, and it's probably a smaller number.
Yeah.
It really is.
Yeah.
Well, that's a negative thought. I'd erase that.
Yeah. So we have about a minute left. So I'm going to real quickly. I know that you guys were prudent to not talk about each other's businesses because you can't take that out of the boardroom.
Right.
But when you'd have conversations when you both served on a board, what might you talk about that might be interesting that you shared? Real quick, I'll start with you, Steve.
One of the things that I believe fervently about is that, and I use the words, you don't skate too close to the bright line. That line will move, and we see that occurring all the time. In other words, do what you think is right. and know what the law is and everything, but you don't want to go all the way to that last inch. It won't serve you well because that line will move.
Well, and we talk about governance matters, talking about that sort of that moral compass, and the world is moving so fast, sort of doing the right thing and how not doing the right thing can erode value very, very, very quickly.
You see that all the time now.
I would say the other thing is Dad has always been a supporter of smart people succeeding. And he especially believes in that with respect to gender. He thinks that one of the best things he can do is support women who have been very smart and successful in their careers and make sure they get where they need to go. And that has truly been a gift for me. And he does it really by being gender blind. It's if you're smart, we're going to help you succeed. And it's been a wonderful part of my professional life, is knowing that he always had my back.
Well, that's us dads that have daughters. That it doesn't hurt at all to help with the gender sensitivity side. So, well, Ann and Steve, this is like a reunion for me. So I want to thank you guys for
Thank you
taking
for
the
having
time
us on your show.
to come on the show. And that will conclude this edition of Inside America's Boardrooms. We hope you enjoyed the show. We'll be back again next week when we take another look at a critical topic that'll help you be a better board member or committee member. So we'll see you then.
Join us again next week for Inside America's Boardrooms. Brought to you with Knowledge Partners, NASDAQ, the Center for Audit Quality, and PwC. Along with content contributors Equilar, Meridian Compensation Partners, Wilson Sonsini Goodrich and Rosati, Donnelly Financial Solutions, and the Society for Corporate Governance.